That is a gorgeous painting behind you.
Yeah, it's called Free Spirit.
That's beautiful. I love the
Thank
colors
you.
in it.
It's
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Very peaceful, very zen.
Yeah, I've been experimenting, well, not experimenting. Last year, 2019, I've been really working a lot with yellow and blue.
Ah, so it's your yellow and blue moment.
Yeah, I go to Atlanta a lot,
Uh-huh.
and they have the most beautiful gardens you can imagine, no matter where you go.
Right.
And there are places where all you see is purplish blue and yellow. And it just captivated me and I couldn't get it out of my system.
Ah, so you've been inspired by gardens like the old painters used to be inspired. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
No, I was looking at your work and I was, well, first of all, very impressed. It's got a very strong voice, and I like the voice. It speaks, and I was trying to I was just trying to take it all in because you seem to be very prolific. Is that correct? You produce a lot of work?
That is correct. I don't have a uniform method that I can say this is my signature
Yeah,
because that's the way I experience art. It's the feeling, it's the pulse of the period of the day
absolutely. I
where I
agree.
could either sit down and work on something I composed and evolve with, or I
Hmm.
could sit and at the end of the day, before going home for my studio, just whatever scrap of painting is left on my palette, I would just smudge it leisurely and let it take a form of its own and then build on it.
It's very organic. I love that. And I love that
Absolutely.
you use different formats and different styles, but it's still undeniably you. Even though
Thank you.
it's, it can be mixed media or it can be a painting, it still has your touch on it. It's very inspiring.
Yeah. Well, my biggest inspirations are the earth and the sea. And I travel a lot. And every different landscape comes back to basically two things that I'm drawn in.
Mm.
What I see during my walks and everything about the oceans and the seas that I've seen along the way. And they all have an impact, no
So I
matter
take
what.
it that when you travel, you go to places where there's open spaces and you're not a city traveler. You go to outside, more tranquil spots.
I do both actually. I
Mm.
like to walk in cities. I really walk a lot. I love to walk in New York City
Mm.
and discover all the hidden treasures that other people don't see. And one of them, for instance, is the garment district, which is close to where I live. I go there at least twice a week, either to buy material or just I want to feel the energy of the people there. And then you look up, you see these beautiful sculptures
Mm.
along the facades of the buildings. Some of them look like they've been built in the 19th century.
Yep.
And it's just a marvel. That's why I always have a camera with me, just to capture the moment
That's
and meditate on it.
that's amazing.
So there's a little bit of the country in the city because even though you have the energy of the people around you, in Times Square, for instance, there's a quiet moment where you can stand still and just focus on one thing.
I
And
always ask artists a question similar to this, but I'm going to phrase it a different way. Do you remember your earliest memory of being a creative spirit?
You mean in terms of
Just you
kind of
take
philosophically, or like the first work that I
both.
created?
Do you remember that moment when you said, I'm not like other people, I'm an artist?
I think it was in my mother's garden in Haiti. She had a beautiful garden.
Mm-hmm.
She had roses, portulacas, and she had sunflowers. That we had a big yard, and the sunflowers faced east.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, they were bathed in the sunset. And as a little girl, I remember it was a marvel to me. It was almost like it was growing in front of me, you know? And then she had a beautiful rose garden. And then when I went to, my sister and I, she would give us roses to bring to the Mother Superior, because we went to Catholic school. Every single morning, we would bring roses to the teachers. And so these were really the moments when I thought, this is just a world that nobody was expressing that except for my mother, because she was a designer. So I used to work with her a lot. I used to just observe her and look at what it is. And when I was maybe 8 or 9, I started just to hang around her and see all the magic she made by making clothes. And very early on, but I couldn't even define it as art. It was just the aesthetics of it that captivated me.
I always tell people that the best color theory class is to go into a garden and look at flowers.
Yeah.
The colors.
Absolutely.
Nature.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing.
And then my mother she used to graft her roses.
Really? Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And it's like, I still talk about it to my brothers who never, of course, they were busy playing with their friends. They never paid attention to that. And she would make all different colors from the grafting. It was just magic. It was like magic. You would see it grow a different color. And she had the exact measurement and how the slant of the position of the scissors. It's just unbelievable. So
yeah, that's a rare skill.
That stayed with me. Yeah.
Amazing. So at that moment you said, this is the path, but did you follow the path, or did you go another way first, or how did it all come together?
Well, I studied literature in college. And I was always interested in textile, and I could make clothes. I actually created something with my mother when I was in my late teens. And then when I came to college here, I also liked literature, especially 19th century literature. So I was drawn into that. And then I slowly started doing little art pieces. And I remember the very first one was decorating a wall in my kitchen. And then that's when I decided, wow. And then I started decorating bottles and all the small objects. But it wasn't until maybe 20 years ago that I started painting on canvas, because I met an incredible teacher, Edla Cusick, that I worked with for over 10 years in her studio. And she actually had group students. And I mean, art was her world. She also wrote for an art magazine. She passed away 2 years ago. And so we spent a lot of time together. We actually even traveled together. We took a trip to India together.
Oh my goodness.
And, yeah, but we worked in a studio and for years and years. And she really encouraged me because there are other students in the class that, for the most part, were doing They were working from pictures or magazines,
Yeah.
and I just realized it wasn't for me. So she encouraged me to just go my way. And then that's when I came with an abstract style that I had, which evolved in different things.
It's almost as though I've heard people describe that when they paint, they're writing with colors. They're writing a story with lines and images, and it's not words. It's with the emotion of the color, and that's what I see in your work.
Yes, and actually one of my favorite is mixing colors, mixing the colors.
Really? So
Yeah,
is it
the new
primarily
one
acrylic?
is, well, it's like, for instance, that piece you're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
every color has every other color in it. Even the light yellows have the dark blues in them, but it depends on the formula you use to mix it.
I
And
find,
to me, it becomes more reflective when
right.
when underneath it's all of one thing.
It's more comfortable on the eye, I think. No, it just feels at ease when they're coming together.
Exactly. Thank you.
No, I mean, I just see it in your work, and I was looking at other. I'm going to share the screen. You see it?
Oh yes, yes.
Oh my goodness. That how did what period of time is that from? Is that recent or?
Yes, I made that one. I think it's maybe about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And this is a board. This is a large board. I think it's probably 48 by 48 or something like that.
Wow.
And I'm a member of Shoshama, which
Okay.
is an organization that is founded by Anita Durst, who makes it possible for artists to rent studios at an affordable place. And the studio that I'm in is in the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So there was a lot of exchange. There were 95 artists in the complex. So there was a lot of exchange going on. So there are exchanges that people know you like certain things. They would either bring them to you or put it under your door after you leave, and you would know, I would know exactly who left me what. And I would return the favor too. But we have an area where if you don't need anything, you just put it there and people will just take it. So in fact, I go there before I even go to my own studio. You could get anywhere from pieces of rusty nails to big boards like this. And somebody didn't want, and I could see, I had to scrape the work that was there before. I could tell that the person wasn't satisfied with what he or she was doing and just left it there. And then I gave it another life. So I totally reconstructed it. So that's another example of, I call that style intersperse, because it's really a situation where for the most part, you don't know where one shape begins and where it ends.
It's got a lot of energy. It reminds me of another piece that I saw of yours, that one.
Oh yes, yes.
With the dark and the light and the energy and the activity between the shapes and the colors.
Yeah, this one is from a whole series called Transitions from Dark, where I start with a dark canvas and I illuminate it. And those really take a long time, because it really about the mood that you bring with you to the day that you work on it, and try to kind of balance the colors and spice it up, basically. It's really like spices put together.
Right, it's like a recipe, like a plate that you're making. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, there was a store in my neighborhood where they sell spices in big containers. You go there and they measure it for you. This is kind of what this is. And I've been going there for 40 years. I love the place. And that's really the feeling I get. You know, when I was doing this piece, it was like, oh my God, they have everything there. I wish you could come here and just, let's take a tour one day, maybe. Just incredible. And the people, actually, they don't use an adding machine. Everything is old-fashioned. It's a Greek store. Everything is old-fashioned. When you buy the stuff and they're adding it up, they use a pencil. They're not allowed to use a calculator. So that's how organic and authentic it is.
That's really wonderful. You know, I took a trip. I remember the colors of Morocco.
Oh yes, I've been there.
Yes, and the houses. It just reminds me of that. The sea, the houses, the colors. Yeah.
Well, I was there in 2004. And I took a trip from Fez all the way to Marrakesh. We were there for 3 weeks. It was incredible. Yes, those are definitely the colors of Morocco.
And I see in some of your work you have figural images. How do you decide when does the mood just strike you and it just says, okay, it's time to put this in the image, or how do you come about that?
This one was, well, my former teacher, Edla, she used to invite people to pose for us in the studio. And some of them, they were not professional models. They were family friends or just people she knew who wanted to do this. And this one was, somebody was posing. And I just, usually when people pause, and I've done a lot of portraits like that, this is one of the few that I did from behind. And I just captured the expression on the back of her head. She was not, this one was not a nude pose, but I just imagined what she was like. Also, all of that brings a lot of imagination out of you.
And this is on canvas?
The neck and the hair and the back of the chair, which is reflective of what in front of her. I totally made it up, but that was her real hair. So that's really how it starts. It's just a moment. And when she brings the models, you could do your still life or whatever you do when you don't have to do this. She wasn't the kind of teacher that was,
right, very strict. No,
like whatever you want and treat it any way you want. And so a lot of times I didn't even pay attention to it, but sometimes there was like something, I don't even remember whether it was one motion or whatever it was, but that's really what I thought was unique about this woman. It was just back of the neck. So that's really how I started. So everything has a point of energy that connects me. And then I start from there.
And I love how you mix things.
Yeah.
In some of your pieces, I love the, let me show you one, I see one with stained glass. There we are.
Yeah. Well, that piece at the center, that's just a small little piece. I think it's 6 by 8. I found in the trash.
No, oh my goodness.
I found that in the trash. And then there is, it's on a board. So there's a lumber yard in the neighborhood. Actually, it closed a year ago. But there was I used to buy little pieces of wood there. And then there was a guy who was cutting the boards, who I was going there so often. So he said to me, well, you don't even have to actually buy all that stuff. If you want, you can come because we're just going to throw all this out. You could just come. which is why I have such a big, heavy load of board work. So he gave me that board, and then I thought, well, what would be a good place to put this piece of glass? And of course, I painted in the center, and then I painted the board, and I thought, you know, it reminded me of all the stained glasses that I've seen in churches and other places, that I would start with a background of gold. So we framed with the gold, and then I thought maybe it needed a little bit more depth. So I tried to reflect the piece in the center on the frame back there. So it's a little reflection of every color that's in there.
I hadn't noticed the gold before. Now I'm seeing it. It's
Yes.
really gorgeous.
Yeah, and that particular gold, I think one of them, that one is gouache. And that's really the only one that could give that really brilliant gold color. So even with the gold, there's different dimensions, you know, different tones. So yeah.
So now that you've had this experience with with your teacher, have you thought about mentoring, or do you teach others, or have you explored that idea?
I have loosely thought of the idea, but then I thought, even she was very progressive teacher, and she kind of gave you space to create the way you want to do it. She would come by. She never taught didactically, where this is the way it's supposed to be. But she would very timidly sometimes go and say, I think maybe that yellow there needs a little bit of darkness to, you know, she would do stuff like that. But as for me, I did take classes at besides working with her, I did take classes at the Art Student League. I feel that the way I see art and the way I connect with it, it's something I can never teach. I have two grandsons, I have three, but two who are old enough to do art. And I work with them when I go visit them. They don't live in New York. We do a lot of things together, but I give them a lot of liberties. And they're such good artists now.
Oh, that's great. It's amazing to teach like that.
Basically what I do, I sit eye to eye with them, and then we equals. And I can make suggestions, actually make suggestions to me, or sometimes we would do a piece together. We do a lot of collaboration. And so that's the way I approach art. I could never teach even a private student, or certainly not in a school, because it's really, for me, a feeling that feels the pulse of something and try to immortalize it through my inner feelings on a surface.
Are there artists that you have studied that you really connect with their aesthetic, or
the one artist, and I go back to art history, the one artist that makes, but there are two artists, one who is very well known, who is Cezanne. And he made an incredible impression on me, on how he approached a canvas and the liberties that he took in his time. And it
Yes.
was also influential on a lot of artists coming after him. The other one was a Haitian artist called Bernard Séjourné. He's a phenomenal artist, a modern artist.
Mm.
And he's just unbelievable. He's a great, great artist. So those are really the two that have a significant, for the most part, effect on me. So, but I appreciate a lot of artists. Like, you know, I go to MoMA all the time. It just give deference to all the incredible creation that I see in front of me.
You probably find inspiration in the literature that you love so much too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It comes alive on the canvas, I bet.
It does. It does. I did a whole series on women, and it's a series, it's portraits, and it's called Drips. And it's actually a series that it really depicts how women are afflicted by situations beyond their control. So it really piles up over their heads.
Right.
And that series, actually, I put them on display. Shoshama has an incredible open studio every year for a weekend. It's a really great show. Hundreds of people come. And that was what I featured in last time. So there was one choreographer, and Jannie knows about that, who was very, very impressed by that series. So she wants to create this multimedia between that particular art, so the visual arts, dance, and music.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh, that is really, really wonderful. And we were supposed to start working on it. She was here in February. She lives in Hawaii. We were supposed to start the project in Hawaii in April, but we were going to be working on it after she went back in March. And then with all the events that are occurring, that is actually put on the back burner because
have you ever dabbled in textile design? Because when I look at your images, some of them, I'm like, it's so beautiful. I want to wear this. I want it to be a shirt.
You know, it's funny to say, but I'm not a commercial person.
Right.
It's not that I wouldn't want to see it happen, but I know that I could not generate energy in something like that. In planning the whole project on scarves or shirts.
Right.
People have expressed that to me. In fact, there was one woman who was going to go in that business who did consider featuring my prints on it. And the way it was going to happen would be that she would do the whole thing because
right.
It's just not me. I'm not able to tackle that project myself. But yeah.
And Jannie was telling me about a book that you just put together that you worked on with, is it Eric, Jannie, that you worked with?
Yeah, and Dana, Eric and Dana. And when Alberte was talking about doing art with people and the way that she works with people, I was thinking about that book. Because if I were answering for Alberte, your question, Eugene, about whether or not she teaches and mentors, I was going to say she's taught and mentored me. And that book was one example. And there's another thing that she just brought up just a few weeks ago. She asked if Dana and I would work with her on another project that is about women and doing artwork around the idea of women. And I didn't tell you this at the time, Alberte, because I knew that at some point we'd be able to talk about it. Normally, if people ask me to create artwork, I say, well, I don't really do that because I don't consider myself a visual artist. But because of who you are, and because I know that when you have an idea like that, it's going to be a wonderful creative experience, I literally was like, sure, I'll do it. And this isn't, I don't think I've told you about this, Eugene. It's not a small project. I mean, because I'm not somebody who considers myself a visual artist. So for me, what she was saying is, 5 to 10 pieces. I was like, I'm thinking to myself, maybe one. But then I was like, I'll do it.
But Jannie, look at that room behind you. You are a visual artist. Come on.
That's what I had in mind. All those things could be part of it.
The way she collects items and things, it's highly visual.
The shape and the colors, they're already there, some of them.
Yes.
Well, and I started to think about this project in terms of that, and then in terms of some other things. So I've got some ideas for you.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just another example, because that's mentoring. That is teaching, that is mentoring. That's doing it in the way that I think personally I appreciate the most, because you're not saying, do a painting for me. You literally didn't say that. You said it's whatever form that you listed them out. You said we can do it in whatever form we want. So that to me is beautiful, because it opens up the person's soul to their own creative life that they might not have even been aware of.
And also, can you conceptualize the respect that gives to women that people aren't choosing for them? You choose what you consider art and put it in the project from your perspective. And
I love
so powerful.
Yeah,
that is really powerful.
It is. And working with her and Dana, I couldn't, we had such a good time and fun, and we had hardships too, working on the book. And everybody was so patient and respectful, and everybody, look at it from a different perspective, and we put it all together. And of course, Eric, who did a phenomenal job putting the book together, editing. That was great. It's so good working with you guys. I want to do it over and over again.
I know well, and I was telling Eugene about the experience with Eric and of course Dana when we were talking about this project, because Eric's doing the editing of these videos that Eugene is creating. So I was telling him some of the other things that I know about Eric and some of the other projects that he's worked on, and I mentioned that one and just what a beautiful project. I mean, it's beautiful work, as we know, but the way that the whole thing came together and the way that we all worked together, it was a really wonderful experience. Joyful experience.
We can't wait to launch it.
No, that's we're waiting for that. I mean, it's launched, sort of. I mean, it's done, it's published, but
it's still a little bit on Instagram, but we want a party.
Yes.
And we're gonna have it where it all started.
Yes.
At Antique.
It is. That's the other part of it.
Meetings.
Oh my gosh, what a great combination.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot of inspiration in that room, in that restaurant.
I agree.
it really was where it started. I mean, it was very funny because through the process of working on that book, I got to know Alberte more. And, you know, as when we started to talk about working on it together, she actually came out to Antique to have lunch on July 4th. And they were doing a special lunch. They were doing, you know, these slow roasted ribs. I'm going to make everybody hungry. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I won't describe it. But.
Our lunch, it was the most incredible lunch I ever had. Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anything less than 4 hours at that point.
Well, and we sat there and, you know, and I had told them that, you know, if they needed us to move or whatever, but they were like, no, because I told them that we wanted to look at the, you know, some of the images and that we were going to be working on this, the beginning of talking about this book. And they were like, no, just relax. So we got comfortable and had a feast. And, so yes, that's where Alberte said that she wants to have her launching party. So we're all gearing up for that.
It sounds exciting. It's especially now, I think it's so important what you're doing is you're bringing art to a world that really, really needs it.
Well, that's why from the beginning, when I started social distancing myself, the governor even announced it, I made a vow to myself to post a painting on Instagram every single day until it completely opens. So still at it.
I've been loving that, by the way.
Thank you.
I've been loving seeing all this work because I know a lot of the work, but I don't know it all. And there is so much of it, and there's so much that's so rich and beautiful in it.
Thank you. Some of them are very old, 20 years, 15 years or more, or, you know, yeah. Some of them actually, because I don't have access to my studio, there were a lot more that I could photograph. So I rely on whatever I have at home and in my computer. So hopefully I have enough before they open again.
It's really wonderful. It's really, really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I think a lot of people are curious to see what I keep hearing from people is what will happen to New York? How will it change? How will it, you know, how will this happen? What will go on? And I always say, my response is always, well, I hope it goes back to the artists. I hope they welcome them back into the existence that they used to have, the influence they had in that city. And I think that should be a picture for the larger world. And that's why I really like what you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I am definitely going to stay at it.
Good.
In the end.
Well, Jannie, have you anything to add to our conversation? I think it's been a really inspiring.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing that I will just, and it's, you know, it's something that we've talked about a little bit, but just in terms of some of the materials that Alberte works with and some of the things that she's highlighting, some of the pieces that she's done have to do with very, very deep issues. And there's something about her work that is always amazing to me, that even if it's something like, you know, I'll see a piece and I'll say, wow, that's beautiful. And she'll say, oh, well, this was actually something that I donated for a group that was raising funds for human trafficking. And I'm like, oh my God. And then she'll tell me the whole backstory behind it. And it's something very deep and emotional. And it's actually the most joyful looking piece. And that's one of the things that I think is so amazing about you, Alberte, is that one of the reasons we can sit and talk for 4 hours is because you have such a deep life experience. And a deeper way of thinking about things, and yet it's still joyful. So I don't sit with you and talk about deep issues and come out feeling depressed.
Right.
You know, like there are those people that we talk to that were like, I love that person, but oh my God, I can't spend more than 5 minutes with them because I just feel so awful. With you, it's like I can spend a day talking about this stuff and still feel hopeful and joyful. And that is just an incredible way that you have about it, because you don't make light about stuff. You're very much about what's really going on and the facts and knowing and, you know, being aware of things and the seriousness of things. But somehow or other, you're able to still laugh and have joy and bring joy to others. And I think that that's really an amazing quality. So I just wanted to mention that.
I forgot to share something. One of the images that really struck me, which I found, this, my goodness.
Oh.
Tell us, that is, I see the ocean, I see so much. What?
Well, this one, this is a piece of driftwood. I have a friend who has a house in Southampton. So occasionally I'll go to her house. She's close to the beach. We'll take long walks on the beach. And then that's why I got this piece of driftwood. There's always stuff like that there. And also I have other people who bring me driftwood because they know I'm interested in it. But she also gave me some of her mother's glass pieces. Like the mother was collecting beach glass. She gave me some of her mother's beach glass pieces, which are spread over there. Her mother passed. And this net is something I got from walking along the beach in Haiti, and the fishermen gave them to me. So every piece has a story. And the glass there is also the glass, just like the lumber yard. There's a glass place not far from me, because I work with mirrors and glass. I'll go there and have them cut things for me. But then they just have like a bucket full of pieces that they're discarding, and then they say you can take some of those. And these are some of those pieces that I just grabbed. And so this is a collection of little pieces of lives, either from workers who cut glass, or people who have a house in the country, walk on the beach, who fishermen in Haiti who were telling me their stories. And that board was given to me by Edla, my former teacher, because she says, oh, I know you like those. So somebody gave it to her, she gave it to me. So that's really many lives incorporated in that piece. And it's one of my first ones of that kind. I have another one called Global Warming. This one is really very, very close to my heart, because it has a little piece of a lot of people in there. And it took a long, long, long time to make. And at one point I decided, okay, it's done, because it took years of gathering little bits and pieces of people's stories and just putting them there. So that's what that is.
Every detail has such heavy meaning.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Well, and that's also when you mentioned the piece Global Warming, I was thinking, and I don't remember the whole story about it, but I do remember that you were telling me, Alberte, that there had been a woman who saw, or a student who saw the global warming piece and decided to do a whole, like, interview you, I think, and do a whole project on the...
Actually had she had the assignment. She had an assignment about the sea and the ocean and seashore. Then she came. It was a boy. I have a picture. I'll show it to you. A picture of of him taking a photograph of this. So the next day, he was supposed to turn in the assignment the next day. I think it was a 12-year-old little boy, and switched the subject to global warming and did his presentation on that. And of course, he had the cell phone picture and shared that in class. Yeah, it was, I'm glad it was such an inspiration.
Well, and that's what happens because you're, just as Eugene was saying, there's so much that goes into these pieces of you and of what you're reflecting back out from the people and the things that you see and the people that you know. And that's it's touching people in such a deep way.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a global world. We all feel sorrow and joy, happiness, and rather than evade the difficult parts, we can incorporate them with the happy part and create a positive energy that can inspire people. And that's part of the definition of art too. Because art has tell us the stories that happened throughout the years from prehistoric time until now. I mean, if it wasn't for art, there are so many things we would not know, we wouldn't understand how people lived a long time ago. All of it went through art. The cavemen, you know.
Well, thank you for all this inspiration.
They're really maps of what our culture is.
Absolutely.
And what we're leaving behind for other cultures to see.
Well, Jannie, I think we've got another great interview. Thank you so much, Alberte.
Thank
It's
you.
really a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Okay.
with that inspiration, we'll leave you, and hopefully we'll get to meet again soon.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I'd love to.
After the world calms down.
We have time.
We have time.
Until then, we'll do more work.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone.